Hey guys, what is going on? I just dropped like all my phones, but basically I get this question all the time and I wanted to settle it once and for all. And I was gonna sit up here and just talk about my opinions and feelings about buying a used iPhone and why I think you should do it all together. But instead, I compiled a bunch of data and we're going to go through it real quick. And I'm going to settle this once and for all of why you should definitely 100% buy a used iPhone. Not only am I going to talk about my personal feelings about buying a used iPhone, all that stuff, but I'm going to pull up the raw data and we're going to be able to see it. So let's check it out. Alright guys, welcome to my Excel sheet. Now this is going to be really boring, but I'm going to try to make it fun. Alright, so let's just start off with LOL, JK. Okay, so now that we're back, listen, alright, boom. This is pretty much a compiled list of iPhone names right here, okay? The initial prices for the iPhones, then the average used price, the difference between these two prices, okay? And the percent difference. Now this doesn't look appealing or anything, and it's really boring, but I will spice it up in a second. Now this is pretty much a price standpoint and a price analysis, but I'm going to be talking about why this is important into, furthering the claim why you should buy a used iPhone. Now if we click on sheet 2, you'll be able to see a breakdown of all the different iPhone names up here, as well as several different prices. Now you might be wondering where I got these prices. Well, I ultimately got 24 different price points, okay? So if we're taking a look at the iPhone 6, on the first 12 for all these, I took these prices from eBay. So there were a lot of different variables that went into getting these prices. I clicked on the sold listings, so I didn't look at active listings. I looked on the listings that were already sold, and all this information is public and everything. The last 12 I got were from Swappa, so I tried to get two different websites. I didn't want to be too biased to one. Now some variables that I looked into when I were gathering these numbers up here, for Swappa it's a little bit easier because it's all there and everything has to work, but on eBay, they sell a lot of 4 parts phones, broken phones, phones that are blacklisted, all this stuff. So I had to carefully go through and compile a list of basically phones that were working, didn't have cracked screens, were completely 100% functional, and on top of that, they didn't have any added accessories besides the original accessories that it had, or a mix of original accessories or no accessories and stuff. Pretty much if it had the box, the original charger, charging block, and headphones, then usually we're good. If it had the phone and charging block but no box, I also added that in. If it had the phone and a case, I didn't put that price in here because that's not very fair for everything else. Either all the original accessories or a combination of some original accessories and none. That's basically what I did. I hope that makes sense. And these were from Swappa, like I said earlier, and you can see it doesn't look that good. It looks a little bit kind of boring, especially when we look at this one. You can just look at the numbers and be like, okay, like how are you supposed to tell the difference between all of them? So to answer that question, I imported all that data into Tableau, which is just a data analysis thing where you can kind of visualize the data and take a look at it. And as you can see, the first sheet that we have open are the initial prices, okay? This is where it starts getting a little bit fun, all right? So here we can see the initial prices for all the iPhones that were released from the iPhone 6. I didn't want to go any earlier because you honestly should not be buying a phone earlier than the iPhone 6 at this point. And you can see that all these different price points were when they were originally released. So the iPhone 6 was $649 and $749, and the iPhone 6s and 6s Plus were the same prices as these. The iPhone SE kind of got thrown in there at $399. The iPhone 7 was the same as the iPhone 6s, but the iPhone 7 Plus was a little bit more expensive at $769 versus $749. Then we have the iPhone 8 at $699, the iPhone 8 Plus is $799, and the iPhone 10 at $999. And the reason this is important is because in order to see the data that we have in the future, we kind of need to see the initial price points and see what they were starting at in order to figure out what they're at now and seeing if it's a really good deal or not. Now in the next tab, if you remember in the Excel sheet, I took all the used prices from eBay and Swappa. Basically, I took the averages of all those prices and I compiled them into another sheet. I want to know how many times I said compile, so leave that in the comment section below. And pretty much all I did was add these into Tableau, the phone and the sum, so you can see the phone names down here. And as you can see, the used prices, and the crazy thing is like if you're looking between these two, you can see that like, there's like a huge difference, but the iPhone 10 kind of stays the same if you're kind of sliding between the two. And the reason that is because the y-axis changes. So up here you can see 900 is the top, but over here 1000 is the top. So it's actually kind of a difference here. The iPhone 6 and 6 Plus kind of took the biggest hit, but as you can see, the iPhone 6s is actually cheaper than the iPhone 6 Plus, which is pretty interesting because I do see that case a lot where people are like, should I get the iPhone 6s or the iPhone 6 Plus? But this kind of breaks it down into kind of a more viewable way if you can see like which phone is pretty much in the same price point. And the 6S Plus is cheaper than these 7 used prices again, and so on and so forth. But again, I want to say that these are all averages, so sometimes you might get a phone that's more expensive and sometimes you might get a phone that's less expensive. Basically, the average for the iPhone 10 used prices was $860.50, 8 Plus was $710, iPhone 8 is $613, and the iPhone 7 Plus is $411.10. Now, I don't know about you guys, but for me, I'd rather have an iPhone 7 Plus than an iPhone 8 for many different reasons. And I want to note again that these were all base prices. So these were all base phones. These were not all like 128 here and 6032 here. These were all base and they're respectable. So the iPhone 6 was at 16 and the iPhone 10 was at 64, and so on and so forth between the two. So now what I wanted to do was I wanted to compare the used prices against the initial prices and view them and see what the biggest difference was between the two. And as you can see from my third sheet, you can see that from the iPhone 6, I keep clicking on these things. As time progresses, the older phones get cheaper and cheaper, right? The weirdest thing is that the iPhone SE had a starting point of $399, but now it's at $111.80, which makes it cheaper than the iPhone 6. And in my opinion, a used iPhone SE is a better deal than the iPhone 6. You can look at the specs, you can look at everything. I'd rather have an iPhone SE than an iPhone 6. And the biggest thing I want to note though, and this has all to do with the used prices, is that if you're looking at these phones right here, okay, let's look at the last 3. These are the most brand new iPhones that are out, the iPhone 10, the iPhone 8 Plus, and the iPhone 8. Look at the prices between all of these, okay? The reason these are still so high, I mean, look at this. The iPhone 8, $699 compared to $613. The iPhone 8 Plus, $799 against $710. I mean, these are like a couple, tens of dollars difference. You know, there's not a huge difference between these. You have the iPhone 10 at $999 and at $860. I mean, that's still super expensive. But if we go one generation older, than the newer models now, you can see that the starting price was $769 and the prices now are at $411. We're talking a couple $100 differences for base prices here. And again, I would rather have an iPhone 7 Plus, a used iPhone 7 Plus, than a brand new iPhone 8. Now, if we're comparing 8 Plus to 7 Plus, and you need to look at the differences between these two specs wise, a used iPhone 8 Plus on average is $710, and a used iPhone 7 Plus now is $411. And you can see that they're almost $300 apart. And you have to ask yourself, is $300 worth wireless charging, maybe a spec bump here and there, maybe a better camera? Not really. I would say it's not at all that big of an upgrade, jumping from an iPhone 7 Plus to an iPhone 8 Plus. And following the same thing down, you can see that as the phones get older and older, the phones get cheaper and cheaper, and that makes absolute sense, But I was kind of expecting that around here, like, okay, like all these phones are kind of the same thing. You kind of see the same thing going on here. But you would never expect how, when you break it down, how different these prices are. I mean, look, the iPhone 7 is $314, the iPhone 8 is $613, so these are all almost $300 apart, which is kind of astonishing that when you compile all this data together, that it makes this big of a difference, almost exactly $300 differences. The iPhone 10 is pretty much an outlier here because there's really nothing compared to it. It's basically in its own league, and it's just insane that as the phones get older, they don't exponentially decrease in price. They pretty much decrease in price when the next iPhone comes out. So when the next one comes out, these are going to drop like crazy, and there's probably going to be a $300 differences between the newer iPhones and this year or 2017 iPhones that are released now. And so moving on to the third sheet, now this is the difference in prices in dollars, okay, between the newer iPhones and this iPhone and all of that. Now going 4 years back in 2018, you can see that the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus depreciated around $515 and $553 with the 6 Plus, and it's pretty interesting how the Plus versions of all these phones depreciate more than the smaller versions, which you would kind of expect because they're more expensive, but you would think that since they're more expensive, they would retain more of their value. And we can see that same thing with the 6S and the 6S Plus. The 6S Plus depreciates more, the 7 Plus depreciates more here, and even at the slightest right here, the 8 Plus depreciates more. It depreciated $88.70 versus the $85.30, and the iPhone 10 has depreciated more than those phones, surprisingly, but it also costs much more there too. So basically what this means is that buying newer phones, you're kind of already setting yourself up, kind of not for failure, but for just paying more for things that already are in the existing phones that have already depreciated a lot. Now the reason this is important is because I would understand if these two phones right here brought a lot, or even these phones, if these 3 phones brought a lot to the table, then I would completely understand and be like, yeah, it's worth the update. But comparing the 7 and 7 Plus to the 8 and 8 Plus, it would make absolutely no sense, I've already done tons of verses and versus videos and stuff like that. If you're on an unlimited budget, like I always say, then definitely there's no reason not to get these. You know, I guess they're better phones, but they're not like $300 extra worth of phone. You know, there's not $300 more of phone here, or even here. I would say you should always at least be one generation behind, because look, the phone has already depreciated a lot within the first year. That, you know, when the next generation comes, within the next cycle, it usually depreciates another couple $100, and then by then, at that point, it usually depreciates another $100 or so. So you shouldn't really be in this lane. You could be in this lane right here, but what I would recommend is staying in this lane where the phone has depreciated a lot and you're only one generation behind. And guys, that is pretty much it. That is basically an analysis just on price. I hope that makes sense to all of you. In case you're wondering, my daily driver is an iPhone 7 Plus, so I do follow my logic, because the phone does depreciate a lot in the first year. So that's basically a breakdown. Let me know if you guys have any questions or anything. Leave it down in this comment section below. I really hope this formatted correctly, because every time I screen record on this and I put it into Final Cut Pro, it always makes it weird and stuff. So hit the like button if you guys enjoyed the video. Hit that subscribe button. That'll mean so much more. Trying to get to 40 soon, so that really mean if you guys can hit that. Check out the links in the description, my SoundCloud, my second channel, all that stuff is there. I'd really appreciate if you guys could check it out. But more importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys, and hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.